economic control is, let's say you have a static economy, and yeah, this is how the flows should be going, okay? And yeah, you've thought out the two layers. What is economic control? It's measuring the actual exchanges, okay? So you're not in the theory of expectation of Keynes. You're not in a probability of exchange. You're measuring the actual exchanges on all these lines so as to try and prevent shrinkage of any one circuit. If there's a shrinkage here, so that gets smaller, you're screwing up the circuit of consumables, bread and butter. How can that shrinkage happen? Some hotshots here are trying to work a dodge on the government. So they're pretending that maintenance is 1/20th of their income, okay? And perhaps they start laying it aside. In other words, they set up a bogus need. And yeah, probably you're familiar with some of your relations. I know you wouldn't do it, but some of your relations do that on their tax form, yeah? That how much did I need for maintenance? Okay, if that is shifted to 100,000, that cuts that down to 900,000. The consumer income is contracting, which means that you're cutting back on the purchase of goods, which means you're discouraging the supplier who started the error in the first place. Yeah? This is very much like Kalecki, the capitalist gets what he spends. John?
My question is to do with the modeling, and it's related to two questions which have come up, where there is some confusion about money being involved. Can you do this as a too-good economy? Or is money intrinsic to this model? Are you just for pedagogical reasons?
Including money.
Including money. Can we just model it in terms of
product?
Just to, yeah. Say the too-good Robinson Crusoe type model that economists are fond of doing. I've been trying to do it and I don't, because the confusion about money supply and about exchange value versus economic value, that comes up with looking at those figures there and thinking in terms of the token money.
Yes.
And we're not thinking about real income flows, which is what this diagram is about.
Yeah, we're looking at real income flows.
Yes.
If you take, say, chapter 1 of Lonergan's 44 analysis, it's a product analysis. Now, there's another way I can present this, and numbers are never mentioned. And you could envisage an agreeable island on which the production flows cater for the needs of the islanders, and there is no money. Yeah?
That we just have promises. So
yes. Yeah.
Without.
Yeah, and we'll enter into it a little bit when I invent the plow. Okay? But in this particular illustration, I'm talking about an actual working economy with money, an exchange economy. And it's not a model in the normally accepted sense. I'm envisaging, say, Prince Edward Island at an earlier stage in its history. And I'm seeing how they might have worked if they had a settled economy for, say, 100 years, with potatoes, plows, etc. No immigration, no trade with other islands, that sort of stuff. But we will actually go into a pure production analysis in the next stage of our struggle. And maybe you see It's not like the two-product thing or like Schraffer or that sort of stuff. And it's not two products, it's two genera. Have you any further light on that? Yeah? Let's hold it, we'll stick with the money flow here in the static economy to see our problems in the static economy. And we'll do the product analysis when we talk about the shift to the plow, because that's where you see the arrhythmic shifting of the two product flows, which has its concomitant arrhythmic dynamic in the money flow. But you see, the problem we have in economics is to avoid modeling at all costs. You want to see what is going on in Manhattan today, or this week. And according to this analysis, what is going on in Manhattan is two flows of the token. Yeah? And they're two identifiable and distinguishable flows. And Lonergan goes to great pains to bring that out, even in the case of, say, Wall Street or the insurance agents. All that sort of working, you can identify where the money is going. Like if you borrow from the bank, the money borrowed, if you borrow $100,000 from the bank, that exchange is not in the flow of production. Now we're going to have to tackle that shortly. The exchanges in the stock exchange are not in the flow of production. We have reached high levels of mythology, especially in the US, of quoting on the news the NASDAQ and the Dow. Yeah? We're interested in the gamblers. One of the reasons, I talked about Schumpeter's business cycle coming out in '39, and it flopped. One of the providences of this book being 55 years late is that it's timely. Had Lonergan produced it, had he got a reader who said this is great stuff in '44 and published it in '45, it would have been buried. But now, at the end of the century, we have reached such heights of stupidity that the US government is bailing out not just the gamblers, but the fringe gamblers. That whole hedge thing.
Gambling on gambling.
It's gambling on gambling. So we have reached a stage where we're in a lunatic state with regard to economics. And the standard economics doesn't match it at all. And yeah, the Nobel Prize winners behind the gambling. At least there was a little shift this year with Sen. Although Sen is, if you look at his curriculum vitae, he has come up through, he has kissed the right ass all the way up. But at least he's a third world economist. We've stopped, you know, the self-promotion of the closed neoclassical view. But you see, the orientation here is we're trying to understand the real economy and try and resist the Ricardo bent that we've inherited. Yeah? That it might be interesting to push for, you know, like Robinson keeps going back to Ricardo as the father of modern economics. My parentage, of course, and I'm not biased, is towards that Southern Irish man, Cantelup. Lonergan and I used to fight over the name because he used to call him Cantillon, because he worked as a banker in Paris. An extremely interesting fellow who invented circulation analysis before Quinet. I like to recall that he was murdered by his cook in London, and the cook was slick enough to burn down the house. But they found the body. Okay, but you see the push I have here towards keep this concrete. Now, the challenge I have for you now is, can you sympathize with this, that this is a concrete view of Manhattan? When I introduced this first in Boston in '77, one of the exercises I recommended was looking out the window of Boston College at the passing traffic and try and identify functionally the automobiles. It's a terrific exercise. Okay, think of the person selling automobiles. The buyer of the automobile can be in the C1 group or can be in the C2 group. The automobiles passing outside on 60th Avenue, some of them are owned by the owners, some of them are on lease, some of them are perks in a business, in which case they belong in C2. Some of them belong in an upper flow because they're perks in a business which is the sales of tools on a higher level. Sales management is part of the flow of the economy. But I'd like us to pause over this and maybe slow down our discussion at this stage. Can you see as vaguely possible that we're thinking of Manhattan instead of PEI? That there is a flow of money in Manhattan, Wall Street, panhandling, prostitution, yeah? And you can identify that flow piece by piece and locate it in one of these two circuits. Now that's a heavy challenge. And it's a bit like, you know, I write down 5 notes from Bruckner. Yeah? Can you get a sense that there's a symphony here? So here we have the being of Manhattan in 2 circuits. And there are so many lessons to be learned here. I mentioned the metaphysician drawing diagrams, page 396 and a half, or Bruckner's symphony. Can you envisage, if you had time, being able to identify the economy of Manhattan in those 2 flows? I once met a Newfoundland fellow. There are a lot of jokes about Newfoundlanders, but this is a true story. I was flying back from New York, and I met a drunken Newfoundlander who had decided to visit New York. And he flew into New York, and he got pickled out of his mind before he landed. And he got off the bus, I think it was around 35th Street, and he rambled down to 42nd Street. And he got trapped on 42nd Street for about 36 hours. And he thought this was New York. And then he found his way back out, and he took a plane home. And I had this extraordinary conversation with him about his view of New York. Anyway. So this is a weird view of Manhattan, that all those exchanges, pawnbrokers and stock market people, etc., are of 2 classes. They're either, and I'll use Lonergan's terminology, basic exchanges. You're buying something you're going to consume, or surplus exchanges. You're buying something you're going to use in your business. and it's a functional distinction. Your piece of money is a lump in your pocket, and it is designated to go in different directions. You have wages. Your wages are not identifiable with your purchases this week because you may be buying stuff for your business. Or when I go a little further, you may be saving some of your money. And that money is not in this circuit. Okay. Now I want to put in one more piece in this puzzle, but I think it's worth stopping here to weigh up this. Can you envisage viewing Manhattan this way? Yeah? And again, you have the exercise of standing at the corner and identifying the automobiles passing. Who's paying for this car is the question. Or who paid for it. But let's say who's paying for it. Somebody is doing the 5-year payment on this car. And it's either somebody who has bought it or is trying to buy it out of the productive process, or it's somebody who has it because it's a part of business. Yeah? You have a car which is part of your sales management, or you're driving a truck. Yeah, can I have a reaction to that? Because it's the discovery of the variables, the significant variables, a functional distinction regarding money. What is the function of this exchange? The function of this exchange is to take the product entirely out of the economy, then you're here. The function of this exchange is to put what is bought into the economy as an instrument, then you're in this flow. Yeah? Any light or darkness?
It just seems to me that some things can be very ambiguous, and maybe that's obvious.
Yes.
But I mean, something like a car, when a car is a perk of some executive,
yes.
it seems to be very difficult to place
Yes.
that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, this is very difficult. Yeah. It's much easier to keep up the Ptolemaic astronomy that is in modern economics. And it won't be any problem if people admit that we are not up to fine-tuning the economy. We have a rather blunt instrument which will destroy the economy. So you're right, it's very difficult. Like for the power company to identify the income from business and the income from suburban consumers. Yeah? To make that distinction in national, gross national product, and to begin it in the villages and so on, and to bring it into economics, and to turn economics into business studies. Yeah, that is not going to be popular. So you're right on, yeah, this is really a crazy challenge. And then to try and do it historically. Kalecki has some very good stuff on this. I quote him in the volume here, talking about the need to distinguish. But it's not a welcome distinction. And again, Kalecki talks about T1 and T2. But notice, maybe this will help, the importance of the distinction. You are a government, city or county or United States. The way you set up the tax structure, if you haven't got these distinctions, you may be screwing up the economy entirely. If your taxation structure is such that you're squeezing this part of the economy, and this part of the economy has just begun the surge of, say, computers, then you're killing off your own economy. If, on the other hand, the surge is over, we'll see this a bit better in the afternoon or later. I was going to say tomorrow. Well, maybe you will see it better tomorrow. If you have, say, we talk about the plough culture, the invention of the plough, and the manner in which a plough culture moves rhythmically through plough production to an eventual, maybe after 3 years, increased flow of potatoes. Okay? If your tax structure is geared to cut back on consumer flow, you're killing off the economy, that part of the expansion. So you see here, without these distinctions, you actually don't know what you're doing as a government. Yeah, does that make some sense? But it's a very difficult distinction to put into operation. We see that there is a rhythm in it. And the problem is to see that as you see an automobile. There's no ethics of driving an automobile. If you don't respect the machine, then you're classified as a bad driver. Now, Lonergan's perspective is that if you analyze the productive process properly, you'll see that there are internal rhythms.
It's a machine.
That it is a mechanism.
And we have to look for the right viewpoint. We have to picture the machine just right, so we,
we respect the productive rhythms that will benefit the common good. If you kill the productive process when it's just going into a basic expansion, as he said, then you have a disastrous economy, and you have the slumps that keep turning up. What we'll see is that the problem in a modern economy is to temper the surges so that in fact you do have the basic expansion. But yet you're bringing in ethics and politics here, yeah?
Well,
yeah. But it does bring out the point that if you don't know how it works, then whether or not you think taxation is good, you can certainly say,
here's what it's doing.
This is the damage it's doing as you operate it. And there are later damages, like trying to pay off national debt.